It's time for Reason.
No, we changed it. We're the ones with the power of the purse. We'll decide what inflation's going to look like when it comes to educational funding or what that dollar amount is actually going to be. Thanks for the input. I'm glad you like the formula. This is what we're going to stick with. People are tired of it, and if they continue to rail on it, they're going to begin losing support of it from the general public because it's gone on for 20 years. So now they're changing the argument.
This is the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Then I get on my knees and pray. We don't get fooled again. Don't get fooled again.
Hey, what do you say we kick off another day? Welcome into the Voice of Reason, broadcasting live out of the heart of the nation here in Wichita, Kansas, on the Big Talker 1480 on the AM side, 102.5 on the FM side, KQAM, simulcasting on TV. I don't know why you want to see my ugly mug, but welcome in on TV, KGPT TV, channel 2610. Welcome aboard. Great to have you along today. It is a pre-Friday celebration, the day before the greatest day of the entire week, as I love the quote that I've heard from a few individuals lately, that every day leads to Friday. I kind of like that mentality. I kind of like that concept. We work hard all week long to party hard all weekend long, which may consist of, by the way, sleeping all weekend or just relaxing, which is what I plan to do this weekend. But that, to me, is a party hard kind of mentality. Welcome in, 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. If you want to join into the program, we'd love to hear from you today. We got a heck of a show for you lined up today. Heck and a half, really. Coming up in just an hour from now, Congressman Ron Estes is going to be joining us from Washington, D.C. He's got a few votes today, and we'll see what he's been voting on, what the hot issues are regarding last week when we had the pro-ICE rally. If you remember, he did write a letter of support, one of the first elected officials in the area to want to reach out and actually support that, and there was a vote in D.C. to support ICE, and he did so. And we'll talk about that coming up in a little bit. Plus, there's some really interesting news coming out of the state of Kansas as Senate President Susan Wagle in Topeka ended up removing a Republican from a leadership position in one of the cabinets or one of the committees because, as a Republican, she had endorsed two Democrats in federal and statewide elections. Is that right? Is that wrong? I'll get your thoughts on that one in just a little bit here because that is really interesting. Maybe, just maybe, we're seeing some positive news with the turning of the Republican Party in the state and the exposing of some of the moderates, some of the not so pretend to be Republicans, but not so really Republicans in the state of Kansas, and actually making them to expose themselves for what they really are, which is not necessarily people who represent and support Republican values. So we'll have that story in just a little bit and get your thoughts on that. In the 8 o'clock hour, we're going to have Mark Walters, host of Armed American Radio. You can hear him every evening on KQAM here at 8 o'clock, along with his weekend broadcast. He calls it his monster broadcast Sunday evenings. The reason I have him on today, and if you heard last night on KQAM, I was on his show for about a half hour as a guest. We have a lot of things to talk about, from the NRA ratings when it came to some of the endorsements in the state of Kansas for elected officials. Plus, there's a story that he's been talking about that is really, really wild. And as Second Amendment advocates, as ones who support the Second Amendment, who fight for the Second Amendment, who represent the fighting of the Second Amendment, we have to be very careful on the way that we actually approach the issue and the way that we actually address Second Amendment issues. And we fight for Second Amendment issues. There is I don't know if you've seen it or not, but there is a video that was broadcast on Showtime, on HBO Showtime, and it's viral on YouTube right now, where a few individuals who represent the Second Amendment community ended up partnering up with this. They didn't realize that it was a gag. It was a gag, and now it's making the Second Amendment community look really, really bad. So we'll talk about that in just a minute and get your thoughts on that one, because this is, it's funny if you knew that it was a joke and someone who actually doesn't represent the community of the Second Amendment was actually in this. But the fact that we do have elected officials that partnered up with this, the fact that we have individuals who represent gun organizations partnered up with this and they didn't realize that it was a gag, is really damaging and detrimental to the Second Amendment community. So we'll talk about that in just a second. It is funny but not for who's actually in it. And their careers are probably over. Their reputations are completely gone and shredded, and it's really kind of sad. It's really kind of sad. So we'll talk about that in just a little bit here as well. But your thoughts and calls as well. 316-721-8255. 316-721-TALK. It's going to be a heck of a fun show. I am curious, speaking of TV, we talked about the Showtime show, which we'll get to in a second. I have some audio bits from this as well. But speaking of TV, I don't even remember the last time I've actually sat down and watched a TV show lately because I've been so busy, which is a good thing. I actually got to go out last night, and we got to see the parade out in Cheney for the Sedgwick County Fair, and we got to walk around the fairgrounds for a little bit, and I miss the fairs. Let me tell you, fair time is the greatest time of the entire year. It really, truly, honestly is. Growing up in Ohio, the fairs are massive. I mean, the county fairs, it takes you 2-3 days to walk around the entire fair. Not nearly as big around here, but that's okay. Just the atmosphere of it. We had some fried food. I have to admit, last night was the first time I've ever had fried macaroni and cheese. Fried mac and cheese, and I was really excited about this, and it was delicious. It was fantastic. Now, I have not yet tried. I've noticed that now we've gone down the road of just trying to fry everything, and there are a few booths at the Sedgwick County Fair where they have fried Oreos. Have not tried that yet. I don't necessarily know if I want to. If you have an opinion on that, you might have to let me know, because it's always been on my bucket list to try like the fried Twinkie. I have tried fried ice cream. I love fried ice cream. Have not tried the fried Twinkie yet. Have not tried the fried Oreo yet, but I'm intrigued. And my wife had never tried fried macaroni and cheese. I thought it sounded absolutely delicious, and we tried it, and it was absolutely delicious. But that was just me. So we had some fried food. We had a little voice of reason, walk around and get to ride some of the rides and have some fun. Got to walk around the different booths and got to see everything, and it's got to see the animals, and it just brings back that great feeling of awesomeness as we go into fair season, meaning as well, though, by the way, that we're slipping out of summertime and into fall time. It's done already. It's kind of a crazy thought, right? I mean, I don't know when the official time for fall is, but the fact that we're already talking about fairs, and the Sedgwick County Fair is going on right now, the state fair is going to be coming up here relatively soon, another month or so. That means that fall time is around the corner. Still the greatest time of the year, but the fact that summer just slipped by way too fast. So I was at the fair last night. We actually got home really late last night, which was not the original intention, but it was a lot of fun. It was good to get out, to have some fun. But I don't know if writers for TV shows are actually running out of ideas. I don't know if we're just taking things to a whole nother level to try something new or different. But let me ask you something, show of hands. According to the AP, there's going to be a new TV show, kind of a reality TV show thing, because that's the new trend, is reality TV, where it pretends to be real, but it's not really real. But Dr. Pimple Popper. Show of hands who actually wants to watch Dr. Pimple Popper now has her own reality TV show. Now, this started off as a YouTube video of the Dr. Pimple Popper popping and squeezing pimples. Try and say that 5 times fast, by the way. But Dr. Pimple Popper, that started off as a YouTube sensation, now is having their actual own reality TV show, to where there are cysts and there are pimples and there are really large things that the doctor goes in and squeezes and removes from individuals' bodies. To me, that sounds like the grossest show on TV. I don't know if I would want to watch it. Oh, but at the same time, you're intrigued and you're like, wow, I kind of want to watch to see how gross this can actually be. So maybe we're running out of ideas. I'm not quite sure. But Dr. Pimple Popper now having a reality TV show. I just thought you should know. So that way you can be totally grossed out, and then you can tune in so you can confirm that it's going to be really grossing you out as you watch it. It's kind of like what the guy code, right? I mean, every guy in listening on the show right now is like, yeah, that sounds really gross. I'm going to have to go watch this now. You remember the joke? I forget who did the joke on stand-up comedy about the guys always have to do the gym bag where it smells nasty, and you open it up and woo, that smells nasty. Here, take a whiff of that. See how nasty this smells. Oh, and the guy has to do it. That's kind of what's happening right here. Is Dr. Pimple Popper now having a reality TV show to pop pimples because, well, why not? So there's one. On the other front, when it actually comes to ratings that are actually with TV shows doing well, the Major League Baseball All-Star Game apparently got their behinds be in the ratings to America's Got Talent. Now, I love America's Got Talent. I have not seen any of this season yet. I don't know if it's any good or not, but the ratings are being beat by America's Got Talent with the sporting events, which means to me two things potentially. Number one is that America's Got Talent may be just really good this season, or number two, that people are starting to fade out of the sports stuff. We're getting into election season. We have a lot of issues that we're trying to address. We have a lot of news going on, and the entertainment value is going on, and maybe the politicalization of sports maybe has harmed or damaged the sporting community. And it's maybe bled from football into baseball as well. Now, I don't know of anybody that's kneeled for the national anthem during a baseball game yet this season, or any season really for that matter. I mean, it is America's pastime, but I am curious about why sporting events are starting to dip in the ratings. Maybe it's something stupid that the baseball season's dragging on way too long. I mean, and that is the case. They start way early in the season, and they have, 180 some odd games throughout the entire season. That's a lot of games to follow and keep track of. It's the slow, ongoing season that seems to never end. But the rating for the All-Star game dipped it dramatically compared to America's Got Talent, which is kind of interesting to me. And then you get something like this in the entertainment side. I don't know if you've watched it. I've never seen the show. I don't know if they call it a documentary or a comedy bit or what they call it, but anybody see the show Borat? The Borat show where he travels around the world, and he travels around the world and talks to people about America, or he talks to Americans about other parts of the world. I don't know exactly what the show is, but the comedian Sacha Baron Cohen, who was Borat, made the film a few years ago, and it was a really big hit. It was a really big sensation. Well, he's back at it, and he's making another show called Who is America? And he ended up making this 10-minute clip that was going to be aired on Showtime. I don't know if it did or not. It was supposed to. But then it got leaked onto YouTube, and it went viral. And Who is America? Where he plays a Russian, and he's staging himself as a Russian and interviewing individuals within the Second Amendment community about guns. And his push to try and make the gun community look very foolish is trying to arm young children with firearms. Trying to get pro-gun activists to support the idea of putting guns into the hands of 3- and 4-year-olds. Literally. I mean, and it's a spoof. It is a joke. And it was supposed to be a joke, but at the same time, individuals within the gun community would obviously know, wait a second, no, we don't support something like that. Well, why not? You have a Second Amendment right, but you have to do the handle your gun responsibly, and obviously a 3- and 4-year-old is not responsible enough to have a gun. But some gun activists ended up partnering up with this, ended up doing the interview, not realizing that it was a gag or it was a joke or a prank, and I think their careers are over. And I know Mark Walters has talked about this on Armed American Radio a little bit, but I have a couple of clips of this. This is the first one of, I'm going to call him Borat just for the all intent and purposes because that's relatable and some people have actually seen the show, but this is what he had to say at the beginning of the clip.
Sheket Zair. My name, Colonel Eran Morad. I am the terrorist terminator. In America, there is big problem of shootings in schools. The NRA want to arm the teachers. This is crazy. They should be arming the children.
All right. So that's right there. They should be arming the children. Why arm the teachers? Trying to do a tongue-in-cheek mocking of the Second Amendment. So then comes one of the individuals who's actually a representative of the Second Amendment community, Philip Van Cleve. I don't know if you've ever heard of the name or not. He's with the Virginia Citizens Defense League, trying to advocate for Second Amendment rights across the nation. And he ends up getting on board, and they end up doing, again, bad publicity here, not looking good for the community of the Second Amendment, but he ends up doing a child's tutorial on how to fire firearms along with Borat in this lesson that they do for kindergartners.
Shalom, children. My name is Eran Morad. I here to show you that guns, when used responsibly, with training from grown-ups, can help keep you safe in your school. Here to help teach you is Philip Van Cleve. Not every strange man you meet gonna be friendly and non-threatening like me.
Today, we're going to teach you how you can stop these naughty men and have them take a long nap.
That's right, and that's why you're going to meet a friend of mine. His name is Papi Pistol. Now,
All right, so hold on. First off, right there, I'll share the video on Facebook so that way you can see it as well. But Puppy Pistol is a pistol where they put a little fluffy dog on top of the pistol trying to decorate it for children.
will you show us how to feed Papi Pistol?
To feed him, take his lunchbox and push it into his tummy like
As in the
this.
magazine.
Just remember to point Puppy Pistol's mouth right at the middle of the bad man. If he has a big fat tummy, point at that.
Great. It's fun.
Okay.
Puppy Pistol is part of a whole group of new friends that your parents can get you, called Gunnimals. Wouldn't you love to meet this little Gunny Rabbit?
He's ready to put the naughty man on a very long time.
All right, so then they have the Bunny Rabbit one with a gun as well.
Out.
How about the magical Uzicorn?
Well, this is
The
one for the
Uzicorn,
girls. It's
yeah.
a lovely little unicorn that you can play with.
Dino Gun can stop an entire crowd of bad men.
And Tots, you gotta learn that Dino Gun eats and spits his candy really, really fast.
Rocket Ship RPG will take you to the moon.
Or rather, the bad guys are going to the moon if they attack your school with a truck full of big, scary fireworks.
And introducing BFF, a starter gun for infants 24 months and under. BFF is so easy to fire, even a baby can use it.
BFF wants to help you. Pull the string.
All right, BFF, now there's a handgun inside of a teddy bear, and you know, like the little string where you pull the string and it usually talks to you? You pull the string on the back of the teddy bear and it fires off a round of a handgun inside a teddy bear.
On a bad guy. Make bang, bang.
Now it gets better. Here's the song for
Aim
it.
at the head, shoulders, not the toes, not the toes.
Fire!
Head, shoulders, not the toes, not the toes.
Fire!
Eyes, ears, and belly, and nose. Head, shoulders, not the toes, not the toes.
Fire!
All right. Now, anybody watching this or anybody that has seen this, and if you haven't seen it, I recommend you go and do. It's called Who is America? By Sasha Cohen. And if you're watching this, you would be chuckling because it's kind of comical. It's stupid, and that's why it's comical. The fact that we have pro-Second Amendment advocates that are actually participating in this as seriousness, and an individual that's part of the Virginia Citizens Defense League like Philip Van Cleve, that it's actually part of this, is extremely damaging. This is not the kind of publicity that the Second Amendment community actually needs by advocating for Uzis and handguns inside teddy bears for toddlers because, well, we don't understand the proper responsibility of handguns. 316-721-8255. If you've seen this video, I want to get your thoughts on this. But is this going to damage the community? I know this is just giving the arson to the progressives who think that we're nuts anyways, clinging on to our guns. And now the fact that we're advocating for children 3 and 4 years old in order to actually carry a firearm and then make it all nice and fluffy by putting stuffed animals on top or inside of the gun. It's kind of upsetting. 25 minutes past the hour. We got a lot to get to here. This is the Voice of Reason. Stay here.
You're listening to the Voice of Reason on the Mid-America Network.
There's a big difference how some states want to handle immigration, illegal immigration, the children, and how we actually handle some of these issues. We'll talk about some of that when we come back as well. Your phone calls on the video, Who is America, and the gun rights activists for children and toddlers carrying firearms. We'll talk about that and more when we come back. This is The Voice of Reason on a Thursday. Stay right here.
keeping reason in the world of politics.
But if you're really angry, why in the first place are you not frustrated and angry to the fact that you have to spend $250 to $600 of your own cash to be able to provide resources in the classroom?
This is the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Hey, welcome into a Making It Happen today on a hashtag pre-Friday celebration. That's the way we live today. That's the way we roll, and I look forward to every single day. Welcome in, waking you up better and better each and every day. We love having you aboard. Welcome in 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. If you'd like to join the program, you're more than welcome to do so. Facebook Live feed, by the way, is up and rolling today. Love it if you go on there, like it, share it, leave a comment, ask a question. Let's just get the conversation rolling on there again. Facebook.com/1480KQAM. Coming up in about a half an hour right now, Congressman Ron Estes will be joining us. Looking forward to chatting with him. We do have his statement, by the way, on his vote on preserving and supporting ICE, and we'll talk about that in just a second. But I do want to give major kudos to Senate President Susan Wagle from up in Topeka, as we are beginning to slowly but surely weed out individuals who do not support Republican values. And we've talked about this the last couple of days, because the question is, at what point does someone represent, quote unquote, the Republican Party while not voting for the Republican Party? And I can see it. I can feel it. That there is a momentum change. There is a tide change within the Republican Party to actually start representing Republican values. If you notice, I don't know if you're aware or not, but the Republican platform in the state of Kansas is beginning to become a little more stringent. It's beginning to be a little more strict. And they recognize, they say, we support X, Y, and Z. We value X, Y, and Z. We represent and we respect X, Y, and Z. We recognize the fact that the Supreme Court, and they added this in there this year, by the way, too, that we recognize that the Supreme Court of the state of Kansas are not legislators, should not be legislating, and that they will not be activist legislators within in black robes in the Supreme Court. And that fact right there should help anybody who is a Republican with an R in front of their name when they go up to Topeka as an elected official, for them to recognize the fact that we will not be bullied by the Supreme Court. That is good news. Now, if they go up there and they vote the other way, and they do whatever they want to, and it's not representative on Republican values, then we have the opportunity to be aware of that, to expose them for that, and to be able to change that tide. And that's what these elections are for. That's why they're so important in the midterm elections and in the primary elections. I know they keep saying this blue wave is happening. I just don't see it coming. I don't see the blue wave coming. I see, especially in Kansas, I see more conservative individuals giving maybe some incumbents, giving some moderate candidates a run for their money. I really do see that, because you and I are frustrated enough, and we're beginning to realize the fact that there's a lot of issues in Topeka, just as there are many issues in Washington, D.C., and that we have an opportunity to change them by not doing the status quo. We're starting to recognize the directed frustration that we have, rather than just lashing out, rather than just getting upset with everybody, that we actually have targeted approaches of frustration and wanting to fix it that way. I see this happening. Why? Because sometimes when you get really, when you get just blind mad and you're seeing red and you just lash out at everybody, you come home from a bad day of work and you just lash out at your spouse. How was your day, honey? Shut up! I don't do that. I've never done that, but some people may. How was your day? I don't want to talk about it. And then everything's at night's grumpy. You're grumpy because the food was cold. You're grumpy because there was a lump in the couch. You're grumpy because the TV show that you wanted to watch wasn't on because it was interrupted by a ridiculous sporting event. Everything just gets under your skin, right? In politics, that's very easy to do. As you know, emotions run high in politics. And a lot of times you and I just want to lash out, just be done with it, just clean the slate, start over. I hear a lot of people say that. But what we need to do is have the targeted approach. Know exactly who we should be frustrated with, exactly what we should be mad about. And right now, I've been mostly frustrated with the fact of individuals who pretend to be Republican, run as a Republican, but to have very liberally tended mindsets and want to increase taxes and want to increase spending and want to do liberal progressive things, want to expand Medicaid, want to repeal Second Amendment rights. How many Republicans came from the NRA that got an F rating in the state of Kansas? A lot of them many of them incumbents. And that should be a red flag for you and I to stand up and say, wait a second. It's time for us to not only keep the majority of Republicans, but start weeding out the ones that are not quite representative of not even conservative values, just Republican values, the basic principles of Republicanism by limited government, less taxes, less regulation, low spending. That should be common sense. And some of them just don't do that. Now, I don't know if you saw the letter or not. We shared it on Facebook as of last night when it came across. But there is the official stamp of Topeka Senate President Susan Wagle today announced the removal of Senator Barbara Bollier, a Republican from Mission Hills, from her leadership position with support of Senate Majority Leader Jim Denning. The removal is in response to Bollier's endorsement of 2 Democratic candidates for state and federal office. Senator Bollier will be removed from her position as vice chair of the Senate Public Health and Welfare Committee. Quote from Senator Susan Wagle, after Senator Bollier's embarrassing endorsements, I have no choice but to remove her from leadership position effective immediately. While we respect differing opinions in our caucus, it is unacceptable to betray members of your own party by publicly endorsing leftist Democrats. Senator Bollier has lost credibility within her own caucus, which makes it impossible for her to function in a leadership role. Now, Jim Denning did make a comment as well saying, quote, this is profound and personal disappointment to me. At this time, this is what is best for the Republican Majority Caucus and Senator Bollier's office moving forward. Now, here's the question that I have for you. Should there be repercussions like this by removing her from leadership positions because of an endorsement as a Republican to Democratic candidates? I'm in support of this. I like this idea. If you're not going to support your party and you're not going to support Republican values, then we don't want you in a leadership position as a Republican representing quote-unquote Republican values. I like this. This is a way to begin weeding out the ones that do not have the values that we represent and uphold as a Republican Party. Do you disagree with me? Because I know some may. First off, they're allowed to endorse whoever they want to. We don't want to stick solely with the party and retire to the two-party system and the division between the two parties, and we want to see a little bit of unison, and if we can do bipartisanship, then that's great, and we want to support that as well. And I see people making that argument. Not to mention the fact that we're the open umbrella and we can believe whatever we want to, and we have differing of opinions, and so on and so forth, and even the Republicans can have some tendencies of that way, and that shouldn't be based on what type of leadership that they actually have. I won't agree with those positions solely for the fact that if a Republican supports Republican values and the Democrats become more and more on the fringe, then that's a problem. If they're endorsing Democrats to be in leadership positions and in elected seats, meaning that they want to work more closely with Democrats, then to me, that's going against the Republican values of what we stand for. And I mean, especially being on the Senate Public Health and Welfare Committee, what does that mean? I'm sure that they have a say when it comes to Medicaid expansion, which means that they're trying to put leadership positions in. For example, she did endorse Laura Kelly for governor, meaning that she would want a governor that would want to expand Medicaid, and as a member of the Senate Public Health and Welfare Committee, she would be in support on the Senate side of expanding Medicaid, and then having a governor position meaning a Democrat that would want to do the same thing. Is that a Republican value? Is it okay, in your mind, for someone to be removed from a leadership position like that? Now, remember, it's gone both ways. If you remember last year, Senate President Susan Wagle removed State Senator Ty Masterson from different chairs and committees as well because he was too conservative and went against Susan Wagle on many issues. So is it maybe an abuse of power, or is it something for us to finally begin weeding out some of the non-Republican Republicans within the Republican Party and begin to expose them in that sense? Should we have the party tribalism, or should we be reunited and united as an actual political party? Your thoughts on this? Kind of an interesting way to approach this. Now, because of this, Barbara Bollier did say that she's thinking about removing herself as a Republican and either running or becoming a Democrat or as an independent. Not quite sure yet, but according to the Topeka Capital Journal, the CJOnline.com said the senator did say that she was ready to leave the Republican Party and vowed not to be swayed from taking a stance in supporting Democrats. It shows the character of the individual and who she actually supports, and the fact of the matter is that she's really not much of a Republican, which means that we need to call her out for that. 316-721-8255. Let's go to the phones, get your thoughts on this. Line number 1. Good morning. What's your name?
Scott.
Hey, what's going on, Scott?
Well, when I looked at the Wichita Eagle, it appears once again they've proven the city council and the bicycle mayor, are trying to create even a more stronger police state by not budgeting for a library for kids or job development, but instead adding more police so that they can tighten the grip.
Well, it's an interesting conversation. I definitely want to have that because it's been on the radar. I don't really want to talk about that right now, though, so I appreciate the call, Scott. But I do want to bring that up, especially next week when it comes to City Councilmember Brian Fry coming in and as we debate some of the city budgets, which is really important, as you mentioned. I mean, 2 libraries being closed, a golf course being closed, and then hiring more police officers. So interesting conversation. I do want to have that, just not right now. 316-721-8255, 46 minutes past the hour. Let's take a break, wrap up hour number 1. Your thoughts on the Republicans ousting a Republican from leadership committee members, positions in the committees because of the fact that they're endorsing Democrats. Good idea, bad idea? We'll get your thoughts on that when we come back. This is The Voice of Reason.
This is The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier on the Mid-America Network.
8 minutes at the top of the hour. Welcome back into the Voice of Reason, making it happen today. Trigger warning for all the individuals on the left side of the aisle. It's okay. It's cool. I know we have a lot of Democrats that listen to the show, by the way. I do appreciate that. I would like some more confrontation, so to speak. But we do have a lot of fun. 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. As the Republicans, I think, I see a red wave happening, not just a red wave with more Republicans coming into seats, but I do see a lot more conservatives that are really going to have a fair chance of challenging many moderate candidates in the state of Kansas. Just imagine for a second as we try and target our frustration of what's been going on when we realize educational funding. I've been talking to some people in the community, educational people that don't, by the way, necessarily follow politics every single day. What's your thoughts on educational funding? Some say, well, we need more money in the classroom. Agreed. We need more money in the classroom. Doesn't mean that we need more money to the district, per se. The district needs to be paying attention on where they actually spend their money. We did see the story, which we will talk about next hour a little bit as well. I don't know if you recognize or not, but a lot of the parks or the playgrounds at the schools being fenced off so where the public cannot get to them. Kind of an interesting idea, concept. Good, better, and different. We'll talk about some of that, but how much money did that cost for the school districts? Say, you know what, let's build a fence around our playground so that way people can't get to them at the elementary school. I used to do that all the time, be able to go and play at the elementary school as a kid. Before school, after school, during the weekends, we'd take the walk, go to the small community, walk around to be able to go and play at the playground for a bit and then be done with it and have a good time. Now, they're fencing them off. How much money did that spend? When we drive around and we see the massive schools, and you think, okay, you'd think they'd be fantastic. They'd be doing really well. And then you hear, oh, we're hurting. We don't have enough money. We're trying to suffer. We need to raise taxes. We need to spend more. And then what do? They end up using it to have light up signs for the school. When you see them and they end up having a massive playground, or you see them having a rock climbing wall, or you see them having an AstroTurf practice football field, because that is the appropriate place to spend money, right? So we need to direct our anger. What is it? It's the Supreme Court. What is it? It's the local school board. It is not the legislature. And if it is part of the legislature, it's the individuals who are voting to allow that to continue over and over and over every single year because that's their special interest. Those are the targeted approaches we have to have, and I think we're doing that. I really think that we're doing that. When the Supreme Court continues to bully the legislature and we say, no, we're not going to do it anymore. And we say, stop, let's build the wall, let's draw the line. That's the line, don't cross it right there. And that's what the mentality we have to have. And if you don't have that mentality, then we need to get somebody else in that does. When we see a retroactive tax increase, the largest tax increase in state history. where you owed massive amounts of money to the state of Kansas this year when you filed for last year. Because of the fact that they said, well, sorry, I know that it was implemented in July, but you're actually responsible for that difference between January and July from last year because you really need to pay that amount of money. And by the way, that's only going to be $60 million for the state. So it's not that much money, but at the same time, it is going to be enough for us to continue to spend more because by 2020, we're still in debt and we're in the red and we're negative as a balanced budget's supposed to be, which means in 2019, coming up in just a few months for our legislative session, we have to worry about where to find more money while they're asking for more money. Show of hands, anybody, the legislators that are going to Topeka as of right now, do you have the faith in them to fix it the appropriate way? Or do you see another tax increase? That is why elections have consequences and why something like Senate President Susan Wagle that ousted a Republican from a leadership position because all they did was turn around and endorse Democrats, to me, is a very good thing. Because to me, we're finally looking within the internal members of the Republican Party and saying, wait a second, you're not representing the values that we need to have. And to me, that is good news. Some may not like that because they like the diversity of the umbrella. You know what? Let them do whatever they want to. We're not here just for the tribalism of the Republican Party, and it's not about that. It's not about the tribalism of the Republican Party. It's about what it means with who they're representing and what values we're trying to promote. By a Republican endorsing Laura Kelly for governor as a left-wing fringe Democrat who supports abortion, who wants Medicaid expansion, who wants to raise taxes, who wants to repeal everything that conservatives do, who wants to repeal the Second Amendment, and as a Republican endorsing that doesn't mean anything about the Republican Party or the Democrat Party. What it tells you is that we have an individual within the GOP that actually is abusing the platform of the GOP by endorsing someone against every bit of the agenda that we actually have. And to me, that's a dangerous sign. To me, that's a very dangerous thing to have. Can you do that? I guess you can, but look at what's going to result to you. And as we've done it to conservatives like Senator Ty Masterson, who is a leader in the Freedom Caucus or the Truth Caucus here in the state of Kansas, and they continue to fight for conservative values and was removed for different committees and the leadership committees, means that we should be doing the same thing for individuals on that side of the Republican aisle that are abusing and actually not doing what the Republicans need to do. We need to be unified in the Republican Party. Yes, have diversity. Yes, have differing opinions. Yes, have the big umbrella because we are the party to where we actually encourage different views and ideas. At the same time, we need to uphold the platform. We can do that in some different ways, but when it comes down to it, the raw, basic views of the Republican, the reason you and I actually sign up and register as a Republican is to have those Republican values, and we need to have someone actually uphold those to represent us appropriately. Just my 2 cents. Maybe heartless. It may be tribalism. At the same time, that's why we joined the party. Wrapping up hour number 1. Hour number 2 coming up in just a minute. When we come back, Congressman Ron Estes is going to be joining us. This is The Voice of Reason on a Thursday. Stay right here.
It's time for Reason.
No, we changed it. We're the ones with the power of the purse. We'll decide what inflation is going to look like when it comes to educational funding or what that dollar amount is actually going to be. Thanks for the input. I'm glad you like the formula. This is what we're going to stick with. People are tired of it, and if they continue to rail on it, they're going to begin losing support of it from the general public because it's gone on for 20 years. So now they're changing the argument.
This is The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Then I get on my knees and pray. We don't get fooled again. Don't get fooled again.
Well, that's what I'm talking about. Welcome into The Voice of Reason, hour number 2 of The Voice of Reason, broadcasting live out of the heart of the nation here in Wichita, Kansas on the Big Talker, 1480 on the AM side, 102.5 the FM side, KQAM, simulcasting on TV, KGPT TV, channel 2610. Hey, it's great to have you along. Great to be with you on a pre-Friday celebration as we roll right along, waking you up the right way and you can interpret that one however you'd like to do so. 8 minutes past. Welcome in 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. If you want to join into the program, Facebook Live feed is up and rolling as well. Facebook.com/1480KQAM. I am really excited. We love to have him on the program to get our update from Washington, D.C. There's a lot to get to today, from votes that are happening up there to the upcoming election, which, can you believe it? The deadline to register was just 2 days ago, which means it's all said and done. Hopefully you did register. If not, then what the heck's wrong with you, man? Early voting starting next week as well, which means you can get out to the vote, and it's our duty to get all the candidates on as much as we possibly can to talk about these upcoming elections, to give you the information to make that proper decision. So we'll talk about a little bit of that here as well, but with things happening in Washington, D.C., with things happening all around the country, we're really excited to have him on. And by the way, it is a special day as well that I think we need to celebrate. So just to let you know that we can have a little fun as well, as Congressman Ron Estes and his birthday today. Congressman, we get to be one of the first ones to say it, but happy birthday to you, my friend.
Well, thank you, Andy.
It's a good time. So happy birthday. Welcome in. Good morning to you. How things been in Washington, D.C.?
Oh, things are going well here. We're busy trying to get some things done and actually move the country forward and not fall prey to some of these crazy ideas that are coming from the other side.
Oh, I tell you what, they are getting more and more and more to the fringe and more extreme, and they're thinking that this is going to rally them or help them in some way, shape, or form. We had our pro-ICE, pro-immigration rally last week, which we thank you very much for the letter that you sent. It was beautiful. It was the perfect message that we needed. And by the way, the three protesters that showed up, they began heckling as I was reading your letter, because that's what triggered them the most, I think.
Well, I'm glad I had an effect, but I'm sorry I missed the rally. It's important for me and important for a lot of us up here that we support ICE and support law enforcement. I mean, some of these crazy ideas that are coming from the Democrat socialists that we need to abolish ICE. I mean, just looking back at 2017, ICE arrested over 12,000 people smuggling over 980,000 pounds of drugs into the country. They arrested 127,000 illegal aliens for different assault, drug, weapon, sexual assault offenses, including 4,800 gang members. A lot of them part of that MS-13 gang, and for these Democrat socialists to try to come out and say we need to abolish that actually protects us. That's just crazy.
Mm-hmm. I don't get it. And you guys actually had a vote on this just a couple of days ago about, because I saw the story about a week ago about the Democrats trying to propose a bill to abolish ICE. Obviously, that didn't go anywhere. This one, House Resolution 990, that passed very strongly, even with much Democrat support, 244-35, about the embracing ICE and the role that they play in the community. So we talked about this at the rally. I mean, ICE isn't just about border security, as that is part of it, but they fight terrorism in the nation. They work with local law enforcement when it comes to crime in the communities. I mean, ICE has a vital role in our communities, and the fact that there's a movement trying to abolish that shows not only the fringe ideology, but also the anarchy type of mentality that many have in the country now.
Yeah, it really is crazy for them to call on abolishing ICE. And actually, there were 3 different bills that have been introduced by Democrats up here to abolish ICE. And when the speaker said, okay, well, that's what you want to run on, we'll vote on that. And then they backpedaled and said, no, we don't really want to vote on it. We just want to talk about it and make noise.
Yeah.
And so we put the resolution out showing in support of ICE. And as you said, there were a few Democrats that voted for it, but the overwhelming number of Democrats just pushed the present button. They wouldn't even vote to support ICE, or support our law enforcement.
That's really sad. It is really sad that we've come to that level, and they begin to become more extreme. As you know, there is a rally for your Democrat opponent, one of your Democratic opponents, James Thompson, with the rally coming up this Friday with Bernie Sanders and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez as they join here in town to try and rally for that side of it. And I mean, that right there, those two are kind of the epitome of the absolute fringe that despise President Donald Trump, that despise capitalism in the country, that despise ICE. I mean, Alexandria just came out with a statement saying that we should be occupying airports and we should be occupying every public venue we can until we abolish ICE because it's that important to her. Congressman, if that type of ideology gets more traction in our government, we could be in a lot of trouble.
Yeah, she really represents this lunatic fringe. If you really want to talk about it, it was a very poor turnout in the primary, which she won, and she's standing up there with Bernie Sanders, and just that whole Democrat socialist message that our government ought to own property, they ought to control businesses. Basically, they'll let you live in a house, but you have to do what they say. She talks about Israel occupying Palestine, and then she backs off and says, well, I really don't know what I'm talking about. And it's amazing that somebody like that's going to have an effective voice and actually have an impact on things that happen. And I don't know, that kind of message may play well with a few voters in New York City, but it doesn't play in the heartland of America. It's really, we know that's not the right thing.
Well, and even as you mentioned, I mean, the low voter turnout really shows too that I think they're aware of it as well. I mean, you're right. It's a scary thought. I mean, I love the fact that anybody can run for office and have the chance to run and represent and be part of the system and do that. I mean, she was a bartender and she became what she is now. So kudos to her with the American system that allowed her that opportunity. That's all great. But to me, it's scary that someone who's running for a federal seat has no idea about geopolitics, says something as ridiculous as the fact that that Israel is occupying Palestine to the point to where Palestinians cannot go home at night because Israel's there and expanding and occupying their territories, and they can't even go to their home at night, sort of thing. And then turns around and says, I have no idea what I'm talking about. Then she made the comment of the fact that, the reason that unemployment's so low is because people are working 2 jobs. I mean, come on, give me a break here. And I mean, it's scary that that's the level that we've almost sunk to with someone that wants to represent us in government.
It is scary that some voters from some district across the country would elect somebody like that who makes those statements, and it's really not the American way, and it's unfortunate that they want to talk about basically taking away everything that we stood for over 200 years as a successful country, and converted it into some paradise like the old Soviet Union that had collapsed, countries like Venezuela that are now collapsing under socialism, and we want to make sure that people like that don't have a voice. I know Bernie Sanders has been beating the drum, and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and they're the poster children for that, but people throughout America can see through that, and we know that's not the right thing and not what we want to do.
Do you almost think that district in New York City, I mean, right in the Bronx area, she ended up receiving 15,000 votes in the primary, which, as you mentioned, I mean, extremely low turnout, 750,000+ people in that district. 15,000 people showed up and voted for her. Do you think that because of that low voter turnout and because of the extreme that she may be or the lack of knowledge that may come out, that there's a chance for a Republican to actually steal a seat that's been held by Democrats for 10 to 15 years?
Yeah, I don't know about that. I don't know about the makeup in that district well enough. I mean, New York politics are really crazy. They have multiple parties on the ballot, and sometimes the Democrat might get endorsed by the Green Party, or the Green Party might endorse somebody else, or the Reform Party sometimes endorses the Republican, and sometimes the Libertarian does, and sometimes they run a different candidate. So they really have a mixed up mess there. In fact, she was also nominated as a Reform Party candidate in a completely separate district than what she lives in. So it's crazy the politics that they go through that would allow somebody like that to be elected.
Yeah,
to be the nominee.
They're a little weird. That's all right. Let's talk about some of the elections here on the home front here. I've been trying to view and observe and be involved a little bit in some of the elections and the races going on around here. I see a lot of support for a lot of great individuals. Your signs are all around the area. And I got to ask, I mean, in the primary race with Ron Estes, have we seen any type of, he said that now it's the grassroots campaign. I don't know if I've seen any yard signs. I don't know if I've seen him knocking. He's done actually one interview, I think. But have you seen any type of activity from your primary challenger?
Yeah, I'm not sure what kind of grassroots he's talking about because he avoided all the media early on in his race, he did sit down and do one public TV interview and said that's the extent of what he's doing. We just talk about it as the M stands for misleading, because he's really just misleading the voters. He's he and his wife have contributed over $5,000 to Democrat opponents over the last few years, including supporting the Democrat that they say they want to run against. And so, the Secretary of State was great in following Kansas law, which allows me to be listed as Rep. Ron Estes, to use the title. So I'll be listed as Rep. Ron Estes, and he's going to be listed as Ron M. Estes, and we just say the M stands for misleading.
Sure. Well, and that's really what it's come down to, because I haven't seen any type of activity other than one or two little interviews there. Talking about the district, other than that, are you seeing the momentum? I've seen the headquarters that we have for the South Central Kansas Election Center, the headquarters there, a lot of yard signs, a lot of activity. Congressman, I know they're talking about a blue wave, but I'm really seeing a lot of energized Republicans, not just in Kansas, but all over the place.
Yeah, I don't think there's going to be a blue wave this year. I know the media that supports the Democrats is kind of talking it up, but it's kind of, you look district by district, both the federal level and at state races, and you look at the good candidates that are running as Republicans versus the candidates that are running as Democrats, and we do have to encourage our voters to get them out. That's always something you have to do during an election. Obviously, the folks that are out there that have the Trump derangement syndrome, they're going to get out and vote. We've seen that in the special elections, that the Democrats got out a whole lot more because they were opposed to President Trump, and that's just the piece that we all need to be mindful of, and make sure we get out and vote and do our obligation to support our country.
Sure, absolutely. Let's talk about some of the issues that you guys have been working on in Washington, D.C. I know, other than the vote to support ICE, which was a great one, kind of in the heat of what's going on right now, but what else has kind of been happening up there? The appropriations process, I know, as you said, was kind of be going on during the summertime. How's that process going as well?
That's right. We're in the middle of our appropriations for fiscal year 2019, which is basically working through the spending bills. Yesterday, we worked on the appropriations bills for the Department of Interior and Department of Environmental Protection Agency, and so we actually were voting last night up until about 11:15 on a bunch of different amendments and trying to get some good policies passed, as well as making sure we're spending money on the right things. One of the things that I helped push through and we were able to get passed just barely last night is an amendment to block the EPA from going back and attempting to requalify the lesser prairie chicken as an endangered species. After the courts ruled that they were out of order in the process they'd taken, and now that we've seen all these private conservation efforts and seen some rain come back into the drought-stricken areas from 5 and 8 years ago out in western Kansas and other parts of the country, we're seeing that the prairie chicken, lesser prairie chicken, come back in terms of numbers. But really, a lot of what we're trying to do with these appropriations is make sure we spend money in the right places, make sure we rein in some of the bureaucracy as much as we can.
No, absolutely. And that was a question. I'm glad you brought up the EPA. I know there was kind of the big news a week or so ago when Scott Pruitt ended up resigning. But what is the status? Does it look like with the EPA right now? Are we still in a decent position? And when it comes to the appropriations, do we still look like we have an opportunity to maybe cut some of their budget and downsize the EPA a little bit?
I think we have. We're cutting the number of positions, cutting the dollars a little bit. The temporary acting secretaries is helping continue some of those good changes that Secretary Pruitt had started. That part, when you get a big bloated bureaucracy like that, is they keep heading in the same direction. So you get all these employees, thousands of employees, and they've got this mindset that they want to work a certain way. They may not be bad individuals, but they just have the wrong policy thought process. And so when you come in with a new administration, a new secretary, you have to start changing a lot of things from the top down, and it takes time to get all the way through that. And so there's still a lot of work to do over there at agencies like EPA and Department of Interior, as well as a lot of others. But there's some headway being made, and I think that's going to continue.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, little by little, we're chipping away at it, and that's the way it needs to be. And at least going back to the appropriations process is a great first step in order to actually make some of this actually happen. Congressman Ron Estes, we're running short on time here, but we thank you again for everything that you do. Keep up the great fight, and let's see this big, nice red tidal wave come through, because I see the opportunity for conservatism to continue to expand. I got to ask one last question, but your thoughts on the, I know it's been kind of the big news lately, but your thoughts from President Trump when it came to the whole press conference with Vladimir Putin, the criticism that he got from that, and the big question, is Donald Trump selling out to the Russians?
Well, I think that's part of the Trump derangement syndrome, that they're going to criticize everything he says. I mean, I support and believe our law enforcement intelligence officials, who said that the Russians interfered in elections, and obviously they did that. The president said he misspoke a little bit Monday, and Russia is an adversary in so many areas. I think there's some things we can work with Russia on to work together, but we also have to be mindful and follow the old adage that President Reagan said, trust but verify.
See, I like that right there. Congressman Ron Estes, we always appreciate chatting with you. We love it. Happy birthday to you, my friend. We'll talk to you again real soon.
Thank you, Andy. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you.
Hey, always a pleasure. We love it. 23 minutes past the hour. This is The Voice of Reason. Stay here.
This is The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier on the Big Talker, KQAM.
By the way, just to let you know, thanks again to Congressman Ron Estes for joining the program. In case you want to, they have moved the Bernie Sanders Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez rally to Century 2, to where there is more people, and it sounds like they've had a decent amount of people sign up for it, because it did sell out at the old venue. So if there is any interest in going, you're more than welcome to do so, because it sounds like they're going to have more space in order. I'm curious to see what they're going to say. I almost want to go for the intrigueness of it, just to check it out. Just to listen to what they have to say, because I would love to be able to get some audio clips of that when they say, "We don't know what we're talking about." Because it's going to happen sometime in the rally. It's going to. I'm kind of intrigued. Got some calls on the line. Stay there. We'll get to you as soon as we come back. Got to take a bottom of the hour break. This is The Voice of Reason on a Thursday. Stay right here.
Where we go when we just don't know, and how do we relight the flame when it's cold? Why do we dream when our thoughts mean nothing? And when will we learn to control?
Defending the rights of every Kansan.
I'm not being aggressive, I'm being dominant.
This is The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Making it happen. Welcome into The Voice of Reason. Great to have you along today on a hashtag Freedom-Loving Thursday, or a pre-Friday celebration, however you want to call it. Does not matter. Welcome in. 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. This portion of The Voice of Reason, as we do every Thursday, brought to you by Riverside Cafe with your complimentary burger and fries. 3 locations. 2 in Wichita, 1 in Derby, 9125 West Central Avenue, 739 West 13th Street in Wichita, and 824 North Baltimore Avenue in Derby. We'll give you your complimentary burger and fries before the end of the segment. Stay tuned in for that in just a little bit. 316-721-8255. Let's go right to the phones. Coming up in a half an hour, we got Mark Walters, host of Armed American Radio, joining the program, as there was an interesting video, and I may play some of the audio of that video in just a bit, of Republicans' leadership when it came to the Second Amendment rally, or Second Amendment advocates who have done some damage to themselves. And we need to be very careful of what we support and what we get behind, just because opportunities present themselves. And we'll talk about some of those details in just a little bit. Until then, let's go to your phones. We got the phones lining up. Line number 1. Good morning. What's your name?
what's going on? It's Deacon.
Deacon, what's going on, sir?
Hey, man, if I was any better, I'd be twins, buddy.
Hey, I love it every single day.
Yep. I got to say, you going back a couple of segments where you were talking about the difference between, wanting Republican leadership and the Democrats. You look at what they want to get rid of. They want to get rid of ICE, a law enforcement organization designed to keep Americans safe.
Sure.
We want to get rid of the IRS, an organization designed to take away from Americans.
Well, I mean, that does kind of create some type of slave state, doesn't it?
It really does. When the government says that they have the right to your money before you do, that to me is an issue. It's a real problem. It's like I'm working for the government. I'm not working for myself.
Right. Oh, right. I just saw, as you're talking about this, I mean, that falls right into this. Congressman Estes, who we just talked to, shared just a few hours ago the Newsweek article about Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez saying that we need to abolish ICE and protesters should occupy every airport and every border until this happens. The comment from Congressman Estes, well, James Thompson, Laura Lombard, and the Democrats say, when will they say enough is enough? They should be ashamed of themselves. It's long past time, James Thompson and disinvite Alexandria Cortez and Bernie Sanders to denounce their dangerous socialist position. And, of course, some of the comments on here consisted of course, calling him a racist. Because remember, and we talked about this at the rally last weekend, that if you believe in actual border security and not open borders and not defending illegal aliens, then remember, Deacon, you and I are racist, right?
Oh, yeah. Don't take into account that, my family... My family ain't white, so I'm trying to figure out how I'm racist. I'm white. My daughter is biracial black, and my oldest son is biracial Korean. So I'm trying to figure out how I am a racist.
Well, you probably have half white privilege, so therefore you're a racist.
Yeah, I don't get it.
Yeah.
Because there are people that I don't agree with. I don't accuse them of being a racist or a bigot until they say something or do something that is blatantly bigoted.
Mm-hmm.
People tell me I've got white privilege. Where's that privilege at? I start work at 4:00 in the morning. Mm-hmm. I work out here when it's going to be 106 today.
Yeah, have fun with that one. I do not envy you in any way, shape, or form with that.
Me and my coworkers, and the street department guys, all of us that work out here in the street, we're going to be roasting today, and we're just, hey, let's get the job done because the job needs doing.
I got to ask you, especially with 104, 106 degree weather, and you're dealing with trash, does that heat make it smell any better or worse?
Oh man, my first summer working here, there's a Chinese buffet. I quit eating Chinese food for 2 years, bro.
Oh, I can only imagine. That right there just made me not envy you even more. But I give you credit for doing that one. This argument about wanting to abolish ICE is not only sickening and it's sad and it's yet kind of funny all at the same time, but it really goes into the same idea. Do you remember during the Black Lives Matter movement, a couple of years ago, they had advocated to abolish law enforcement agencies across the nation because we want community enforcement as opposed to law enforcement. And I really think that these are the same types of advocates thinking that we can handle things on our own when obviously we don't, because if that was the case, we wouldn't have any crime in the streets right now because the community would already be showing the example of what they can do on their own without needing law enforcement, correct?
Oh, I'm with you. I used to volunteer with the sheriff's department back in Oslo County, North Carolina, and we would all the time, we'd go into different communities, and people there were so afraid of the gangs in those communities that they wouldn't talk to us. They would not say, oh, yeah, I saw that guy. I saw him do this, because they knew they were going to get, somebody was going to get a little retribution on them. The police, in an ideal scenario, they don't have to worry about that.
Mm-hmm.
They know that people are going to come at them because they've got the uniform on. So they don't have to worry about, oh, you know what? Now I've got to worry about this criminal coming after my family.
Sure.
Yeah.
No, you're right. Deacon, I appreciate it. I mean, that's I
got to say one more thing real quick, if you don't mind.
Sure, go for it.
Ronald Reagan, he said that, I used to be part of the problem. I was a Democrat. Well, I used to be part of the problem. I was a Democrat. I was an anarchist, and I see that is just the dumbest thing in the world. I don't understand how anybody, when they give real rational thought, would ever go in that direction. Mm-hmm. You have a fantastic day, brother.
I love it, Deacon. I appreciate it very much. No, you're absolutely right. I mean, I can see the differing of opinions. I get the fact that people have different views on things, but this has gone to the side of lunacy. This has gone to the side of extremism to want to abolish an agency that not only helps protect the border, but actually wants to keep Americans safe, that fights terrorism, that works with local law enforcement in order to keep communities safe. And we want to abolish something like that, and not only just abolish it and think, let's just talk about it in the back rooms, the smoke-filled cigar rooms or whatever, but actually say, let's go out and protest and actually cause an issue and actually try and occupy airports and occupy the border and so that way we demand it. We demand it because that's how bad that we want this. That is a dangerous view to have a little bit, I think, isn't it? I mean, if there's a big difference between saying let's abolish ICE that keeps us free and safe and abolish the IRS to where, they really don't deserve our taxpayer money because it's our money in the first place. As Deacon nicely pointed out, we work for ourselves. We don't work for the government, and therefore the government should not be able to just say, you know what, we're just going to take percentage off the top of whatever you make because we deserve that, and that's what we get, and if you don't like that, then you can go to jail. Again, punishing workers, punishing the successful, punishing Americans while we try and fight for the protection of individuals who weren't supposed to be here in the first place. I find that quite ironic, and we can see the priorities of the progressives. Let's go back to the phones at line number 2. Good morning. What's your name?
My name's Ann.
Good morning, Ann. How are you today?
I am fine.
Good.
And we used to have an ICE agent on our block. And I tell you what, that was the best thing that happened to our block for 20 years. Mm-hmm. What people don't understand is he would be sent out to New York to bust drug rings, to bust crime in all over the U.S., crime rings.
Sure.
And one of the main things where his job really got amped up was our open borders, because all kinds of criminals and rapists are coming across the border. Do you think they're going to stay in a country where they've been doing this their whole career? I mean, America's just like a candy bowl to them because they can come in unoccupied and people can't find them.
Sure.
So they would send them back across the border. They'd be right back. And another thing, his pay got caught with the Obama era, and he would be laid off because Obama was cutting them.
Shocker, right? Yeah.
Yes. But anyway, he caught crime in our neighborhood from people coming from Wichita, and I can guarantee you, when he set up a little, what is it? You catch him and they don't know you're watching.
Sure.
I mean, they'd freak out when he'd flip out his ISIS badge.
Sure.
But they do a lot more than border work, and people have no idea. He would be gone for 2 weeks at a time, trying to bust crime rings or drug rings, and his wife really wouldn't know where he was.
I mean, and that's a scary position to be put in for himself, but not only for him, but for his family as well, to say, you know what, what's he doing? Oh, I don't know, busting up some kind of drug ring or crime ring that's going on from illegal aliens. And again, not all illegal aliens are bad and criminals in that sense, but at the same time, that's a dangerous position to be in. And then you see protesters who show up like they did at the ring where they busted the crime ring of trying to sell minors into human trafficking and the sex ring and whatever. And ICE comes in, does the raid, saves these children, and what do? They see protesters outside trying to protest ICE because they hate them that much. That's how sick these individuals are.
Well, and I think a lot of them are getting paid to, I mean, who has time to go picket all the time? This is my thing. The hardworking, illegal American citizen really does not.
Mm-hmm. That's a great point. No, you're absolutely true. And I'm glad you brought up the fact that you're right. I mean, they do so much more than just border enforcement.
Heavens, they're doing all kinds of stuff.
Sure.
Murders, they're investigating murders. It goes on and on and on. Mm-hmm. To correct the American public. And I think the prior caller brought up a great reason. They want to get rid of stuff that protects the American citizen, while we want to get rid of the IRS.
Exactly. Well, and there's two
I mean,
drastic
that's a
differences between
great
those.
point right there.
Exactly. I love it. And I appreciate that very much. Have a great Thursday to you. Here's the big kicker as well. I mean, if we like socialism so much and we see Alexandria Ocasio, who's a socialist, who wants socialist views in the United States, who wants to get rid of capitalism, who's really excited about that, and we have Mexico that just elected a socialist president, we have Canada that's a socialist nation up there. If socialism's so great and so wonderful, then the individuals doing the caravans from Central America going through the entire nation of Mexico to get to our borders, why wouldn't they stay in just the happy-go-lucky, wonderful country of Mexico, as opposed to coming all the way through it and saying, we need to ride through this hellhole, and we need to go to the great place of America, because they're not socialists. They do have the streets paved with gold. They are the American dream, and we want to go there, and we're going to risk our lives going through the corrupt, socialist, crazy nation of Mexico in order to get to the United States. If socialism was great, we would see illegal immigration end today, because so many people would be excited about staying in Mexico, where now it's just this great socialist utopia, right? That's what you would think would happen. Not necessarily happening. Let's go back to the phones. Line number 3. Good morning. What's your name?
Patrick.
Patrick. Good morning, sir. How are you?
I'm well, sir. I
Good.
just got back into town late last night. I wanted to see if you had heard about the story out in California, Los Angeles, I believe they said, of the man who attacked his wife with a chainsaw.
No, I did not hear about that one. It's another reliving of the Chainsaw Massacre, huh?
Well, here's the rest of the story, but I didn't. The story was not very. I didn't hear it on TV. I heard it on the radio. Didn't get a lot of facts with it.
Mm-hmm.
But this man had been deported 11 or 12 times and was back in the country, came into the house, took a chainsaw after his wife with 3 kids in the house.
Wow.
Put her in the hospital. And this was in Los Angeles, and he was arrested, but they did not give... I heard this on the radio right after the rally Saturday.
Well, I just brought up the story here. According to Channel 4 ABC, out of Los Angeles, Alejandro Alvarez, 32 years old, faces charges of attempted murder, aggravated mayhem, driving or taking a vehicle without consent, hit-and-run driving resulting in property damage, and 3 counts of child abuse. The felony complaint also included the allegations of great bodily injury with the use of a deadly weapon, which ended up being the chainsaw. And that's a scary thought to be in. And that goes again back to the argument that maybe we need the Second Amendment to protect ourselves at times. What do you think?
Well, I believe that, but I also believe I wish I could have got through to ask Mr. Estes a question on that deal, but I believe that California needs to be held accountable for this sanctuary city, sanctuary state BS that they have going on out there. And I think they should, if they're going to deny federal law, then they need to lose federal funds.
I completely agree on that one. Patrick, I love it. We got to take a break here, but you're absolutely right. It's time for the federal government to crack down on this, and being the fact that immigration, that foreign policy, that diplomacy is a federal matter and not a state matter, that means they get to control what happens with immigration, and I completely agree. If you have openly wanting to be a sanctuary state or a sanctuary city, then it's time for you to lose federal funding if you want to actually be that way. Patrick, I love it. I appreciate it very much, and thanks so much for coming out to the rally on Saturday. It was definitely a great time. We got about a minute and a half. Let's try and sneak in one more phone call here. Line number 4. Good morning. What's your name?
It's Wallace.
Wallace, what's going on, sir?
Well, see, you brought up illegal immigration. It's always my hot button. You know how to push my buttons.
It always seems to just kind of pop itself up here, yeah.
So it was kind of interesting. An article came out where San Francisco, this is the liberal bastion, the land of Nancy Pelosi, the people that hate Russian meddling, they want to allow illegal aliens to vote in their local elections.
Yes.
So they don't mind foreigners meddling in their local elections. But apparently, why do they hate Russians so bad? Why don't they?
There it is.
They hate white people. They like brown people. They're bigots. They're racist. I just have to play the liberal this morning. Why do they hate white people? Why do they hate Russians?
Well, it is that is true. I mean, it is funny. I mean, we don't want any Russian collusion. We don't want any outside forces affecting our elections, because that's an abuse of, which it is. I mean, it's right if someone's trying to collude and trying to actually affect our election one way or another. But then they turn around and say, let's actually have illegal aliens want to actually vote. California's trying to work on policy like that. Maryland, I want to say, is working on. They just passed it to where illegal aliens would be allowed to vote as well. So it's okay with outsiders that have no interest in the United States to come into the country and vote, but we don't want anybody else to try and corrupt it and try and influence people to vote a certain way. It's kind of interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And then one other observation, if I just didn't have the thought just kind of fall out of my head just as I was saying that, I don't know. I have so many things rattle around in there.
Just don't listen to the other voices. It's okay.
Well, I'm trying to listen to the voice of reason, but
I'll see. Hey, I like that.
Exactly. Well, if I think of it, I'll have to wait for another day.
Hey,
but
there we go. Wallace, I appreciate it very much, my friend. Don't listen to the other voices. You got enough of them in your head. One of them coming through your speakers right now, and that's really about the only one that you need to pay attention to at this time. 7 minutes at the top of the hour, brought to you by Riverside Cafe. 3 locations here in Wichita: 9125 West Central Avenue, 739 West 13th Street in Wichita, and of course 824 North Baltimore Avenue in Derby. Riverside Cafe. And by the way, Monday through Friday, just to let you know, if you have children with a paying adult, they actually eat for free Monday through Friday. Just to let you know. Kind of a cool deal. We have yourself a complimentary burger and fries. We'll go ahead and take caller number 3 right now to be able to give this away. Complimentary burger and fries, hat tip to Riverside Cafe. And oh, by the way, carry your firearm either concealed or open in the restaurant, because if you remember, they do appreciate that, and they open that and welcome that with open arms as well. Riverside Cafe, 3 locations here, 2 in Wichita, 1 in Derby. Your complimentary burger and fries. We'll do caller number 3 right now on The Voice of Reason.
The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Wrapping up hour number 2. When we come back, hour number 3, Mark Walters, host of Armed American Radio, going to join us. Some interesting stuff when it comes to the Second Amendment. We have some audio clips to play. If you've seen it, there is a video floating around social media that played on Showtime, HBO, along with a YouTube sensation now that's making the Second Amendment crowd look very bad, because even some leaders in the Second Amendment crowd ended up supporting something that they shouldn't have supported, a gag that they didn't realize was a gag. And now we have to respond to it. We'll talk about that and more coming up. This is your show. It's time to speak up, speak out, speak loud, speak proud, speak the truth, and always speak some reason. This is The Voice of Reason. Hour number 3 coming up in a minute.
Speak. It's time for Reason.
No, we changed it. We're the ones with the power of the purse. We'll decide what inflation is going to look like when it comes to educational funding, or what that dollar amount is actually going to be. Thanks for the input. I'm glad you like the formula. This is what we're going to stick with. People are tired of it, and if they continue to rail on it, they're going to begin losing support of it from the general public, because it's gone on for 20 years. So now they're changing the argument.
This is The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Then I get on my knees and pray. We don't get fooled again. Don't get fooled again.
Oh, this is not acceptable. This is not okay. 106 today? Are you kidding me? 106? Al Gore, where are you? We need you. Welcome into The Voice of Reason, hour number 3, broadcasting live out of the heart of the nation here in Wichita, Kansas, on the Big Talker, 1480 on the AM side, 102.5 on the FM side, KQAM, simulcasting on TV, KGPT TV, channel 2610. Welcome aboard. It's great to have you along today on a pre-Friday celebration, making it happen. 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. By the way, I've been getting some calls and messages about the AM and the FM signal. on radio where it was a little sketchy for the AM. The FM's been popping off on and off. Don't worry. Some engineers are actually out there working on some things right now that causes that. So it will get better. Hang tight. Just bear with us. And you can go to the online stream. You can go to TuneIn and find KQAM. You can go to KQAMradio.com, find the online stream there. Or you can go to the Facebook live feed, facebook.com/1480KQAM. But some maintenance going on this morning. And we may pop on and off just a little bit with the signal, so bear with us on that front. Welcome into the Voice of Reason, hour number 3. I touched on a little bit of this, and I'm really excited to get to our next guest, as we love having him on the program. I was on his show last night for a little bit, but I want to introduce it by an audio clip. Now, I don't know if you've seen this or not. It apparently started on YouTube. It was a Showtime deal for HBO, and the comedian, Sacha Baron Cohen, who did Borat. Now, I've never seen Borat. I heard of it, I know of it, but I've never actually seen it, is what he calls himself as a comedian. And he's done another video where he tried to go after gun activists and the Second Amendment and try and make us look foolish. The problem is that it worked for many individuals who are high up, let's say, in the Second Amendment advocacy groups, trying to defend the Second Amendment, trying to fight for gun rights, and them not realizing that this was a gag, played along with it. And it's not looking good for the Second Amendment community. Here's Borat. I'm going to call him that. Borat. At the beginning of this clip, it's about a 10-minute video on YouTube. You can find it. It's called Who is America? Playing a Russian wanting to buy firearms and wanting to support the firearms and the sale of firearms to minors and children.
Sheket Zair. My name, Colonel Ron Morad. I am the terrorist terminator. In America, there is big problem of shootings in schools. The NRA want to arm the teachers. This is crazy. They should be arming the children.
Arming the children. To talk about that and a lot more from Armed American Radio, you can hear him evenings right here on KQAM at 8 o'clock. Also, his Sunday Monster broadcast right here from 7 to 10, live every Sunday night. Host of Armed American Radio, Mr. Mark Walters. Mark, what's happening, my friend?
Hey, good morning. Thanks for having me on. Had a good time with you yesterday. Let's do it again today.
I love it. I love jumping on your show. I love you jumping on mine. It's a lot of fun. This video, Mark, and I know this. We talked a little bit about this yesterday, but it's funny if we put it in the context of the satire of someone wanting to go after the Second Amendment and try and make gun owners look foolish. The really bad part about this was that the fact that many gun advocate groups and individuals that support the Second Amendment played along with it, not realizing this was a gag.
Yeah, and you in order to appreciate exactly what you're saying, you have to see the video in its entirety.
Sure.
In order to really understand what occurred. But in a nutshell, what you had is you had two long-time, both of these individuals are good personal, and they're dear friends of mine. Both of these individuals are very high-ranking members in the pro-rights community, and it's public. We'll say who it is. Philip Van Cleve, the president of the Virginia Citizens Defense League, one of the nation's most preeminent pro-rights states' rights organizations, grassroots organizations. Many grassroots organizations around the country, pro-rights organizations around the country, have patterned themselves after the VCDL over many years. It's a fabulous organization made up of great people who have done amazing work, and Phil has done incredible work in the trenches fighting for the right to keep and bear arms through some of the nation's most vicious gun control battles on record, and Phil has been there at the forefront. He is a regular speaker at the Gun Rights Policy Conference, sought after around the country to speak at other organizations as a guest speaker. Phil knows his stuff. He's media savvy. Very disappointing that he fell for this. The other is Larry Pratt. As most people know, Larry Pratt, you've seen him on every alphabet soup news show in the country, from morning shows to evening news to Sunday programs. Over the many, many years he's been fighting for gun rights as the head of the Gun Owners of America. Larry also got duped. And now, while there was creative editing, of course, deceptive editing we call it, in both of these pieces, there are certain areas where no editing was necessary for the individuals to come across looking terrible, based solely on what they thought they were doing.
Right. Well, and I want to play a part of this here, and it's about a minute and a half, 2 minutes long, but it is where Philip Van Cleve, as you mentioned, from the Virginia Citizens Defense League, makes a tutorial for children to carry firearms. This is what they had to say. And it's, of course, in the video, it's the fun, kindergarten thing. It's very friendly for children.
Shalom, children. My name is Ron Morad. I'm here to show you that guns, when used responsibly, with training from grown-ups, can help keep you safe in your school. Here to help teach you is Philip Van Cleve. Not every strange man you meet gonna be friendly and non-threatening like me.
Today, we're going to teach you how you can stop these naughty men and have them take a long nap.
That's right, and that's why you're going to meet a friend of mine. His name is Papi Pistol.
Okay, first off.
Right. Yeah, right. I know. The whole thing is unbelievable to me.
You don't know what you're watching. You have a fluffy stuffed puppy that they put on a handgun to try and make it appealing. Now, first off, it is funny if you're using it in the satire thing of that sense, but the fact that we have someone who's a gun rights advocate that's doing this as a serious bit, as a legit individual in the Second Amendment industry, in community, advocating for let's put fluffy things on guns to make them appeal to 3 and 4 year olds. This is very bad for the gun community, Mark.
Yeah, it's very disturbing, and it's very difficult to watch that because no one in our community advocates putting any firearm in the hands of a 4-year-old. In particular, the ludicrous proposition that 4-year-old, which they sold this premise to both Larry and Phil, would be capable of stopping a terrorist attack. If the whole thing is just absurd, and we sit here and we shake our heads and think, how on God's earth did this happen? How did this occur? Now, on Phil's behalf, Phil has made numerous public statements. He made statements. I spoke with Phil literally hours after those bits were filmed.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and he warned me, and he warned the pro rights community and prominent individuals in the community that there was this unknown group of people that had duped him, and some others got caught up in it as well. That was out there, and he was warning people, be careful. Now, in his response from VCDL and from him, he put an audio clip out, and certainly no time to play it. But in a nutshell, what he said was, look, I realized when I was going through this that I was caught on film, okay, with my statements. Then they asked me to do this dopey thing. He said, at that point, I figured I'd play along and essentially take one for the team to expose these people so that nobody else got hurt. And he admitted back in February of last year that when this comes out, it was going to be pretty humiliating, but he didn't realize just how humiliating it was going to be. And a lot of people within the pro rights community are now debating, okay, that's not an excuse. How could you possibly do this? It's a tough time for these guys right now because it is getting a lot of attention, not just in the U.S. but globally.
It really is, and especially I got to play. I'm trying to get to the right timing on this to see it. Maybe this may be the new slogan for some of the concealed carry classes on how you sing along with this
that you can play with.
By the way, the Uzi corn would be my favorite. Yeah.
And Tots, you got to learn that Dino Gun eats and spits his candy really, really fast.
Rocket Ship RPG will take you to the moon.
Or rather, the bad guys are going to the moon if they attack your school with a truck full of big, scary fireworks.
And introducing BFF, a starter gun for infants 24 months and under. BFF is so easy to fire, even a baby can use it.
BFF wants to help you pull the string on a bad guy. Make bang, bang.
Okay, so first up, BFF, before we get to the next part here, was the gun even for the toddler to where they put the handgun inside of a stuffed animal, and you pull the string. Usually when you pull the string, it talks to you and laughs or giggles or whatever. This one, when you pull the string, it fires off a handgun.
It pulls the trigger is what the premise was, right?
Exactly. Yeah. All right, so here's the song, and Mark, maybe this will be time.
At the head, shoulders, not the toes, not the toes.
Fire!
Head, shoulders, not the toes, not the toes.
Fire!
Eyes, ears, and belly, and nose. Head, shoulders, not the toes, not the toes.
Fire!
Yeah.
Mark, I don't know what to say about this.
Look, I feel we didn't shy away from it on Armed American Radio. I brought it up that night, and there's some interesting backstory. And if you were listening to the show, Andy, and to you, listener, on Sunday night on the Monster broadcast, I brought Alan Gottlieb on. Phil Van Cleve was supposed to be a guest on my program Sunday night when this Showtime special broke at 10 p.m. Eastern Time, 9 p.m. there in Wichita Central Time. And none of us had seen the video yet. We hadn't seen the final piece. That broke on YouTube and on the internet. It was released by Showtime earlier in the day. And when I saw that video, I thought, I was literally in shock, as many people within the community were. And of course, my phone was ringing off the hook, as were many others. Unfortunately, in today's day and age, stuff like that doesn't go away. It's out there permanently, and it is now being used by the left to attack everything that the VCDL has ever done, any politician that has ever taken any assistance from the VCDL or worked with Phil Van Cleve, and those politicians who have worked with him have turned on him in many cases. It is a very, very bad situation for everybody all the way around. And on a week where some fantastic news, some of the greatest pro-gun news we've heard in a long time, has come about. Now, to be fair, Sarah Palin, you maybe obviously heard this. Sarah Palin got duped. Dick Cheney got duped. And in those clips that you played, a number of prominent politicians, both retired and sitting politicians, were duped. Dana Rohrabacher, talk show host, former Congressman Joe Walsh, in a very articulate, ridiculous piece, got duped. So will that story come off of the news cycle of the front page? Yeah, it is. It will this weekend when Sarah Palin and Dick Cheney are on. However, in the gun rights community, that thing is never going to go away, and it will always be the subject of consternation, let's say, within the gun rights community.
Exactly. It is sad. We got to take a break here. 20 minutes past the hour. Mark Walters, Armed American Radio, with the video, Who is America? Again, Philip Van Cleve, the one that did that part of it. Larry Pratt, as you mentioned, Gun Owners of America being part of this, and then some of the elected officials where this individual, this Borat, let's go. Which, by the way, did you ever watch Borat?
I did. I've seen Borat. Listen, from a comedy standpoint, if you're ever in a weird, sick, funny mood, I mean, they're funny movies if you want to watch this stuff. Okay, they really are twisted, but they're funny. I mean, when we come back, I want to make a comment about the crew that works with this guy. I think it's important that we talk about this.
Exactly, because this did one part that tried to be involved into this video ended up not happening because someone did spot him at a gun store where they tried to come in. So we'll talk about that a little bit later. But yeah, I've never seen Borat. Never been into that kind of comedy sort of thing. So I was not aware of the Sasha guy, but kind of interesting things. Mark Walters, host of Armed American Radio. We'll continue with him in just a minute. Your phone calls as well on Who is America with head, shoulders, not the toes, not the toes. Yeah, this is the voice of reason.
You're listening to the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
I support the kindergarten program. We in America would be wise to implement it too. It's something that we should think about in America, about putting guns in the hands of law-abiding citizens, good guys, whether they be teachers or whether they actually be talented children or highly trained preschoolers.
Maybe having young people trained and understand how to defend themselves in their school might actually make us safer here.
A 3-year-old cannot defend itself from an assault rifle by throwing a Hello Kitty pencil case at it. Our founding fathers did not put an age limit on the Second Amendment.
The intensive 3-week kindergarten course introduces specially selected children from 12 to 4 years old to pistols, rifles, semi-automatics, and a rudimentary knowledge of mortars. In less than a month, a first grader can become a first grenader.
Toddlers are pure, uncorrupted by fake news or homosexuality. They don't worry if it's politically correct to shoot a mentally deranged gunman. They'll just do it. The science behind this program is proven. At age 4, a child processes images 80% faster than an adult, meaning that essentially, like owls, they can see in slow motion. Children under 5 also have elevated levels of the pheromone Blink-182, produced by the part of the liver known as the Rita Ara. This allows nerve reflexes to travel along the Cardi B neural pathway to the Wies Khalifa 40% faster, saving time and saving lives.
Mark Walters, host of our...
I know.
If it wasn't so sad that it was people advocating for gun rights, if it was just a hoax of people trying to pretend, it would be comical. It would be a funny bit. But the fact that it made individuals who actually advocate for guns to look like doofuses, this is a really bad thing.
It's very funny if you're an individual that ridicules and wants to humiliate individuals who fight for gun rights and freedom across this country because you hate gun rights and freedom. And that was what the last part of that clip was Larry Pratt. Larry Pratt is the president of the emeritus of the gun rights, or I'm sorry, the Gun Owners of America. Very well respected in the community, no compromise. For many, many, many decades, Larry has dedicated his life to lobbying on behalf of gun rights across the country. And I don't have an answer as to how people got duped. There are a couple trains of thoughts here, and I think it's important that we put them out. I had Alan Gottlieb on my program, as you know, last Sunday, when all of this was breaking in real time. Mm-hmm. Alan was on my show 2 hours before the Showtime piece actually hit. As I mentioned, Phil Van Cleve was to join me on the program that night. I felt it wouldn't be a good idea to do that after having seen the video because I didn't know what else was out there. This was coming in real time. So we figured let's just see what happens first, and then we can revisit it from a guest standpoint lineup at that point in time. But 2 hours before this broke nationally on Showtime, Alan was on the program with me. He had also seen the clip that you have played the audio from, and he said this on my program. In this particular case, a couple of our key gun rights activists really embarrassed themselves big time and embarrassed the whole gun rights community. And I think, quite frankly, a couple of them now can no longer be considered to be leaders of the gun rights movement at all. That's coming from Alan Gottlieb. That was on 7:15, of course, on my show, Armed American Radio. Rob Pincus, famed trainer extraordinaire, was also the subject, or was supposed to be a subject of a hit by Borat in that same piece. He was flown first class, given a limousine ride, treated five-star hotel, very generous meal allowances, got to the set, and according to Rob, had discussions with the individuals as they were waiting to film him. He realized, and they realized, that he wasn't going to fall for this prank, and they sent him packing and never put him on film. All right? Wow. So there were a lot of people who saw this and said, I'm not playing along with this. I don't know what this is. Right. This is one of the most ridiculous things I've ever seen. And out the door he went. Now, Alan Gottlieb, first off, as you know, is the nation's preeminent leader and mentor, if you will, in the pro-gun community. Alan has been at this for 40 years and won over 80% of the precedent set in pro-gun cases in courtrooms across this country, including two huge victories at the U.S. Supreme Court, one of which we all know is the McDonald decision in 2010. Alan's organization is responsible for wiping out the gun bans in Chicago, wiping out the gun bans in Washington, D.C., and the nation, the liberals in this nation know that when the Supreme Court pick Kavanaugh is confirmed, and he will be confirmed, that we are going to see some cases and fixing some of these wrongs across the country in our courtroom. So the liberals are petrified, and Alan stands at the forefront of that. For him to say that on my show is extraordinary when he knows both of these individuals and has worked with both of them for many decades.
Exactly. Mark Walters, can you stick over for one more segment with us?
I absolutely can.
Hey, fantastic. I want to finish up this conversation with the Borat video. If you have not seen it, again, we'll share it onto the Facebook page so you can see it. Also, I want to shift gears a little bit as well to the NRA here in the state. We mentioned it on Mark's show last night about some of the endorsements and what's going on there. Lots to get to today. This is The Voice of Reason on a pre-Friday celebration. Bottom of the hour news coming up. Stay here.
You're listening to The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier, your personal political therapist. Give him a call at 721-TALK.
Well, I tell you what, it's really difficult to be a political therapist when it's very difficult to actually get the content. If you're watching the Facebook Live, I apologize, and Mark Walters, host of Armed American Radio, on with us here for another segment. Mark, I think that we're being censored. I think that talking about this, they're not liking it very much. CBS Entertainment has blocked our Facebook Live feed due to copyright content, and they've tried to block it at the same time that we're working on some engineering things with our FM and AM signals right now. But they've tried to they shut down the Facebook Live feed, and it happened at the beginning of this hour when you came on. I think hashtag fake news. They're trying to block us. What do you think?
Let me tell you something, man. I think that I've assumed somebody's been listening to my phone call for 10 years, okay? You've got to work under that assumption now. I will tell you something very neat. I will tell you that I do know for a fact that Armed American Radio was being listened to in the bowels of the White House during the Obama years. That much I can tell you for certain.
Oh, I'm sure, and I'm sure they were
I can't
scared
tell
to
you
death about
how
what
I
you
know
were saying.
that, but I can tell you that that is a fact, and I used to talk about that on the air. Hey, let me real quick wrap up those segments. There's a couple things I wanted to mention. First off, the bottom line here is two very good men are in big trouble from a reputation standpoint because of what this thing did and how they got caught up in it. Mm-hmm. You know, unfortunately, those actions have consequences within their community. There's no question about that, and the consequences, I think, are going to be very severe in this case. A lot of people are distancing themselves from them, as they have to. The other issue is that this Borat guy, Sacha Cohen, attempted to do the same thing. He's been undercover filming this now for well over a year and a half. A gun shop owner out in California by the name of Norris Sweden found out he was being punked when Cohen and a film crew walked into his shop in his store.
Sure.
Immediately recognized him, called him out, and the store security cameras caught it. It's beautiful and it's brilliant. They caught Borat literally leaving the store and his crew inside and walking around outside not knowing what to do, but he got busted. That individual has been very vocal. He's been on national news. The film clips have been. He's going to be on Armed American Radio Sunday and I'll give the time Central Time for your listeners, at 7:30 to 8, following Judge Janine Pirro, who will be on with me from 7 to 7:30. So nice. Don't miss this program coming up.
Boy, I tell you what, that's a heck of a lineup for a Sunday evening. That's perfect.
It'll be a good one.
Yeah, that'll be a lot of fun. So, but you're right. And I was going to play the audio. There's a lot of expletives because that this guy was throwing out. Then they did bleep them, but it's still just a lot. So I'm not going to air the actual video. But a Fox 11 did the report out of Riverside, California, about the Riverside gun store owner that found out that he was Sacha Cohen, Borat. And yeah, I mean, he dressed up with an old guy in a beard, tried to have the accent, and tried to come in and say he was Hungarian, wanting to buy a firearm and try to make a fool out of him. And you know, that's the kind of, unfortunately, that's the kind of sense that we need to have when we go into these controversial discussions, that people want to play pranks on us. They want to try and make us look bad. They want their 5 minutes of fame, and they'll do whatever it takes in order for us to look bad and for them to be able to expose us for that.
They were successful, the comedic attempt and the attack against these individuals, as part of a bigger, broader attempt at conservative Americans. The gun rights community was just one part of this 8 or 9 part series, and we think there may be more out there. We don't know what else he's filmed and who else has gotten caught up in this, but you're absolutely correct. It was a broader attempt, not just at gun rights, but conservatives in general.
In the long term, how long do you think the progressives are going to use those nice little audio clips of members of the Gun Owners of America,
forever?
Or to use these clips and say, "Hey, look at what they believe in. They believe in arming little children. Look how dumb they are."
Well, forever. They're doing it now. The left wasted no time. Everytown for Gun Safety was all over it. You already have politicians up in Virginia ridiculing other Virginia politicians who worked with them and using these clips to do it. It is extremely damaging. And, you know, the gun rights community will move on. We're right. This is not indicative of what people think. Nobody in their right mind would ever, including Phil Van Cleve, which is unusual when you see the clips, and Larry would consider arming 4-year-old children. The whole thing is ludicrous. That's why I don't have an explanation as to how they got caught up in it. I think it was just wine me, dine me. Look at what's going on, and I'm going to be in a TV show. I'm on film. Mm-hmm. But I don't know anybody else in the gun rights community that would stand with an unknown individual in front of a green screen, knowing what can come on a green screen behind you. So, as you've seen,
right?
So, yeah, it's disturbing to say the least. I don't shy away from that. It is.
It is. It's very disturbing. We will share again the video on Facebook as long as we don't get blocked from it for some degree.
Well, I don't know. I would think CBS would want that out there right now. But hey, I got to say this. What does this say about the people, the film crews and so forth, that, I mean, they went through this entire process without cracking a smile?
Yeah, I know. I don't know how they do that.
They're watching someone destroy their lives on in front of their cameras when they punk these people. It is absolutely incredible what kind of people are out there.
It really makes you think. You're right. I mean, for them to for even Borat to keep a straight face when he's trying to say, what does he say in one of the clips there? That we don't go to 2 because, they call them terrible 2s for a reason, but we arm them at 3 years old. And, for guys to be shaking their head and saying, oh, yeah, I agree with that. And for him to keep a straight face, I don't know how they do it. I really don't.
Yeah, it is. I don't know.
What do you do?
I have no answer. I wish I did.
Exactly. I do want to ask you something different. We talked about this briefly on your show last night, but as we've been talking about the elections coming up and the endorsements that come through from many politicians and electorate and candidates and incumbents, and we look, especially here in Kansas, we take NRA endorsements very seriously because we are a very pro-Second Amendment state. We love the Second Amendment. We love our guns. We love constitutional carry that we have in Kansas, and it's a very important aspect to us. And this is not an attack on the NRA. This is not a criticism of our current governor, Governor Jeff Collier, in any way, shape, or form. I congratulate him on getting an NRA endorsement, but I am curious if you've ever seen a scenario where the NRA endorses an incumbent, because, if that's what they do, and that's fine and dandy, but where they have to lower somebody's grade in an election in order to endorse somebody else. And as we explained briefly, Secretary of State Chris Kobach had an A+ rating with the NRA. Governor Jeff Collier had an A rating with the NRA. They lowered the grade for Secretary of State Kobach from an A+ down to an A, and then did the endorsement of Governor Jeff Collier because he's then the incumbent, which is fine, and I think he's just as much of a pro-Second Amendment rights advocate as Chris Kobach. I got nothing against it in any way, shape, or form, but I do find it a little interesting and a little troubling that we would lower somebody's grade for maybe a political purpose. Have you seen another scenario like this before, Mark?
No, but, there's a correlation here between what we saw on video with the guys on the Showtime deal and what you just said. Here's why. Perception becomes reality, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
In this particular case, sans anything Kobach has done that would cause him to drop from A+ to A, maybe an endorsement of something that the NRA didn't like, or a statement made in a video, or caught on film agreeing with something they didn't, whatever the case may be.
Sure.
Sans that, it appears the NRA, and tell me who they endorse?
Governor Jeff Collier.
Yes, there's my appearance. This is where perception becomes reality. It appears that they may very well have, and I don't know the answer to this, but I'm not afraid to say it, maybe dropped that and thought nobody was looking when they did, in an effort to say, well, look, we don't want to catch a bunch of heat from good Kansas gun owners and NRA members and others in the community that support us that might not be members, for supporting someone that's got a lower grade than someone we gave a higher grade to.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I've never seen it done. But I have seen politicians drop their grades because of things they've done and said. So that would have to be directed at the NRA. But perception is reality.
Sure. Well, and the funny part is that as well, the Kansas State Rifle Association did a poll last week, and Secretary of State Chris Kobach did come out on top of that poll, and the KSRA did come out yesterday in response to this and endorse Secretary of State Chris Kobach at the statewide level. So there is a little bit of a conflict there, I guess, between the Kansas State Rifle Association and the National Rifleman Association, between those two organizations.
Well, it's not unusual for that to happen, as we discussed before. We've had, infighting within the family, when I talk about gun rights organizations, at state levels in the National Rifle Association on many occasions, including in Georgia, where it cost the NRA about 10,000 Georgia Carry members a few years ago when the NRA refused to endorse the number one bill that mattered to Georgia Carry in the state of Georgia, and that was getting rid of the public gathering laws that had been on the books since Reconstruction in the South, which formed the basis of the racist roots of gun control, and that was the public gathering laws designed and put into effect after the Civil War to keep freed black men and women from arming themselves. So we tried to get rid of that law. We were successful 2 years later, but the NRA fought us on it. We couldn't believe they did. We didn't understand why, but they were pushing their own agenda, which at the time happened to be guns in cars and parking lots. So it happens within the community. I would love to find out how this shakes out, because the perception is that the grade was lowered so that they didn't catch any flack from their members of why they would endorse somebody with a lower rating. It's interesting. It's fascinating. I don't know the answer.
It is really fascinating. And again, I mean, nothing against Governor Collier. I mean, I congratulate him for receiving the endorsement. I know he is a Second Amendment advocate. It did surprise a lot of individuals. I don't know if you've seen, and I'm sure you've talked about it on your show, but Chris Kobach going through many of the parades with an American flag or with an American Jeep all laid out with the American flag with the mounted 50 caliber replica on the back of that's gotten a lot of attention, positive and negative, for the fact that he's riding around in parades with this big gun mounted on the back of this Jeep. And many gun control advocates have been losing their minds because of this, which, of course, allowed him to be able to do this in even more parades. And some even cities are now creating ordinances to where you're not allowed to do that because they were so, quote unquote, triggered because of that. And with that type of very bold pro-Second Amendment stance that Chris Kobach had done, we all kind of just assumed that the NRA would come out and endorse someone like that because he's been so vocal about it.
Well, a couple dynamics in play. You guys got a very colorful race going on up there. AWR Hawkins at Breitbart covered that story that you're talking about with the fake 50 caliber, and it did get a lot of national attention. Here in Georgia, we've got Brian Kemp in a runoff with Lieutenant Governor Casey Cagle. And Brian Kemp, of course, made national news with the shotgun ad and his daughter's boyfriend, who he appeared to be threatening with the shotgun in a satirical way that the left went absolutely crazy over. Kemp is now leading for the runoff, which happens here next Tuesday. And I think you're going to see Kemp as the next governor of the state of Georgia. He got the endorsement from President Trump yesterday. And the National Rifle Association, I believe, is endorsing Cagle. So you got all these crazy dynamics in play here within the community. It's a lot of fun to watch, but it's all good.
Right.
Because we have good candidates running.
Exactly. I mean, it's a good thing when we're debating on who's going to be more pro-Second Amendment and fighting over which one's going to get the NRA endorsements for which one can go into the office and actually be able to fight for the Second Amendment. So, I mean, we're in a good position here.
You're in a great position in Kansas. You've got a great victory for the Second Amendment regardless. I wish I could say the same thing about that in the state of Georgia, but Casey Cagle was no friend of us when it came to the campus carry bill. He threatened to table it, not let it move because he was playing political shenanigans. Brian Kemp would never do any of that. But either way, Casey Cagle is not an enemy of the right to keep and bear arms. I want to make that clear. Okay, we would just prefer Kemp. He would be that much stronger. So that's. If we can build our muscles that much faster, it just would make it easier for us as we want to move our agenda forward. But let's not forget the National Rifle Association also endorsed Harry Reid for many, many years with an A+ rating. So.
Sure. And that one's kind of a wild card on that one. Not sure where that one came from.
Well, it was based on pure gun rights only. That's the way the NRA looks at it. We don't base it on any other political stance. Gun rights only.
Sure. Well, and if he was pro-Second Amendment, then I tip my hat to him for the one stance that he was actually semi-decent on. So well done on that one. But as you mentioned, I mean, we're in a good position here in Kansas. We're happy about the fact that we can have a dialogue like this. And by the way, I mean, like I said, we love our guns. Not only do we have governor's candidates that are fighting for the Second Amendment and fighting for the NRA endorsement, we had the 2nd Congressional District where we had one of our candidates who I believe dropped out now officially, Tyler Tannehill, that was doing a raffle to give away an AR-15. I mean, we have individuals in Kansas that are very bold and staunch and very strong and vocal about their support for guns and how I don't see gun rights going away anytime in Kansas.
They're not going to. In fact, most people, it's kind of strange. Most people outside of where you are don't really think of, when they think of gun rights, Kansas is not one of the first states that comes to mind. Arizona comes to mind. Florida comes to mind. Texas comes to mind. Most people don't think of Kansas.
Sure.
Kansas has fantastic gun laws. It is at the cutting edge, along with the KSRA. I used to do work with Patricia Stoneking from Kansas State Rifle Association when she was running the organization. She had been a guest a number of times on my program. You've got great grassroots movements, while the left in Kansas is nothing but AstroTurf funded by a New York billionaire.
Well, that it is. Mark Walters, host of Armed American Radio. Running short on time, my friend, but it's always good. Remind everybody again, though, what your lineup looks like for Sunday for the Big Monster program.
Yeah, at the top of the hour, Judge Janine Pirro will be here on Armed American Radio right here on KQAM. After that, we're going to have Nora Sweden, the gun shop owner who kicked Borat, Sacha Cohen, and his phony Showtime crew out of his gun shop. It's going to be a great first hour. Don't miss it.
It's going to be a lot of fun. You may have to try and Facebook Live it so that way organizations can apparently try and block you and say that you're not allowed to do that. So you may have to do that one. Mark, it's always good to talk to you, my friend. We'll get you back on here again real soon.
Anytime. Thanks, Andy. I appreciate it. A lot of fun.
Always a good time. 10 minutes at the top of the hour. We've got some calls on the line. Stay there. We'll get to you as soon as we come back. Wrapping up the program today on a pre-Friday celebration.
This is the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Five minutes at the top of the hour as we wrap up the program today on a Thursday, the pre-Friday celebration rolling right along. Let's try and sneak in some phone calls here, get your thoughts on everything that we've talked about today. Thanks again to Mark Walters, host of Armed American Radio, coming on the program. 316-721-8255, line number 1. Good morning. What's your name?
My name is Eddie.
Good morning, sir. How are you? Yep. Go ahead, Eddie.
Oh, yes. Are you aware that this same man was in which he was going to have a motion picture? The same man, this Boraz guy, came to Wichita, I don't know, 7 years ago, something like that. He went to one of the largest non-denominational churches in Wichita and started filming. And I think he had everything going for him there. But then one of the staff on the church recognized who he was and put a stop to it. But are you aware that he was actually in Wichita punking people?
I was not aware of that. It doesn't surprise me. I'm sure that he's tried to attack religion, tried to attack guns, tried to attack whatever he can. So I was not aware that he came to Wichita, and I'm glad that he was ousted here and that he kind of moved right along and moved out of here. Because, I mean, what he does, again, I've never seen Borat. I don't know what the product actually looks like other than the video that I just saw for this one. But it sounds like he goes out of his way to try and make people look bad in a very sarcastic way.
Yes, but he was here in Wichita, and he put, I don't know whether you were or not, but he put out a film maybe, I don't know, 7 years ago, whatever it was, and he was doing the same thing throughout the United States, like at airports and et cetera like that. Wow. But he did come to Wichita, and like I said, he had the church going for just a short period of time before one of the staff realized what was going on, and they put a stop to it.
Very interesting. I was not aware of that. I appreciate that info, Eddie, very much so. That's very interesting. I'm glad that we were able to oust him out of here. We don't need Wichita looking bad by something that he'd try and do in the community. 316-721-8255. Let's sneak in one more phone call before we wrap up. Good morning. What's your name?
Hi, this is Helen.
Helen, good morning. How are you?
I'm doing just great.
Good. What's going on?
Purpley, you are too.
Absolutely.
Well, the Susan Wagle thing, I'm glad that she demoted that rhino.
Yes.
But I'm angry with her for going after Ty Masterson. So.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad, and again, I give her credit for what she did with this, saying, wait a second, you're endorsing Democrats across the board for elected seats. You are supposed to be helping Republicans promote Republican values. As a Republican, you need to be removed from leadership in this committee, which you're right, I believe is a good thing. But it has, you're right, exactly happened on the other side where Senator Ty Masterson has done the same thing. I mean, he could have been in leadership position for budgetary issues, and they removed him from that to where they don't have as much of an influence. So it's gone both ways now, and I mean, I don't have any explanation on the other one why he was removed from those. It at least makes sense on why we removed this individual from these leadership positions because of the fact that as a Republican, she's endorsing very left-wing Democrats.
Well, the Republican motto and standard and whatever they stand for should be the Constitution.
Sure. Well, and the progressives are very much... Exactly, and the progressives are very much against the Constitution and many aspects of that. Helen, we're out of time. I appreciate the call very much, so we love all the phone calls, conversations. A great one today. Congressman Ron Estes, Mark Walters, host of Armed American Radio, all on here. Podcast will be up shortly. That way you can take a listen to it as well, especially if you didn't get all of it because of the Facebook Live issues that we had. Everybody have a great Thursday. We'll be back tomorrow to wrap up your week right here on The Voice of Reason.